Everyone, and welcome to another episode of Conversations in the Future of Work. I am your host, Rachel Cossar, and I am really excited to get into some pretty alternative coaching mechanisms today with our guest, Mike Sweeney. Mike, welcome.
Hi, great to be here.
So nice to see you and so nice to have you. Would love if you could share just a few tidbits about your background and what it is that you're working on today.
Sure. Usually I'll tell people that I'm a military officer turned girl dad and everything in between. Most of my work today focuses on working with high-performing executives, intact duos like co-founder duos, and high-performing teams. And I enjoy playing in the space between things. So when two things might be true at the same time in a polarized world, that tends to be where I spend a lot of my time.
Awesome. Let's get into it. So, I was thinking about where we could take this conversation today. You have such an interesting background and obviously evolution into the work you're doing today. But I'd be curious to hear if you could summarize your current approach to coaching and really getting to some of those deeper topics with your clients.
Sure. My main focus usually is on building a sense of agency, courage, and freedom with clients, or helping them bring that out, playing in the space between opposites, and helping people move toward fulfillment, which is, I'd say, the next level beyond simply success. And I did mention kind of work one-on-one, work with intact duos and teams. And I find that we're facing more paradoxical situations. So I'm often working with clients on balancing work and life, not moving like a wrecking ball with more work and then more life, but finding a way to balance artfully, accountability and empathy, especially with teams, focus and flexibility, especially with startup teams, with organizations that have very smart people, decision speed and decision quality. My approach, I'd say, is usually, not everybody has a saber hanging behind them. So I'd say I'm pretty direct. Like I like to cut through and say charge every now and then, typically high accountability. Yeah. And I also love to play in the space in between coaching sessions. So a lot of coaches they do their hour, 2 weeks later, they do their other hour. I like the heartbeat in between. And I'm very focused on helping clients build capability and not dependency. So I like at the end of our 6-month time, they now have new capabilities. They might hire me in the future for something else, but they have now elevated their skill sets. So that's a bit of how I approach coaching.
So you mentioned, I just feel like this work-life balance one is one that a lot of people struggle with. So can you give us more of a concrete example of how you might help someone dynamically meet that balance?
Sure. So this gets into often values and boundary work. It's like, what are people's values and in what order? And sometimes achievement is very high on the list at the expense of other things. I lean on some of the work from positive psychology. And one of the frameworks in the book Flourish is PERMA, positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. And if somebody is pegged on the A at the expense of the other things, like not a lot of friends, not a lot of time for home, not doing work that matters to them, sometimes it's a matter of reorienting the values and reordering things. There's also, especially with high performers, I find a lot of insecure overachievers. And I wouldn't necessarily call someone that, but people who feel like I'm not quite enough. And the answer to is what is enough is a little bit more, always. So we talk a lot about boundaries. And usually the first thing I'll say to someone is the most important part about boundaries is believing that you deserve them. I kind of let it sit there. And then I love a quote I read once. It says, the only people who are bothered when you set boundaries are those who benefit when you don't have any.
Yeah.
So sometimes work and life, it's about not the wrecking ball, but a tightrope walker. Like, what does balance mean for you? What do you really want? So balance for me means being able to pick up my daughter on Wednesday at 2:30 from school. So come hell or high water, that's what I want to make sure I do. Balance for me means being able to travel for client work and then mix in some fun stuff on the side, either adventure, hiking, or going to plays. So that's what balance means to me. And balance is a verb, so it's like a constant tweak. So really it's figuring out what are the values, in what order, what are the boundaries, and then how do we make commitments to ourselves and others that allow us to hold to those boundaries? And I find a lot of people say yes to a lot of things that they kind of want to do. And for me, there's hell yes, and then there's everything else.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that there aren't times that we have to negotiate boundaries, especially in relationships. But very often the trick is values are unclear, making decisions that are not aligned with them, and then not having, not deserving, or not holding to boundaries.
Yeah, I feel like that framework can be applied to so many different kind of tricky situations, right? Like negotiating on behalf of yourself, right? It's the same thing, knowing what those boundaries are. And if it falls below that, you're like, okay, so no deal, right? Yeah. I think that's a powerful framework, and certainly being able to stand by your values and boundaries is a massive life skill.
It is, and it's not something that comes easy. And also there's especially people who are who perform very well tend to honor their commitments to other people, sometimes at the expense of themselves. And it's very much sometimes you would literally have to put on the oxygen mask to have the capacity to support others. And that's one of the things that I encourage people to do. You know, have rituals or practices that help you ground.
Yeah.
Anticipate what your capacity might be in advance, identify and have triggers to know when things feel out of balance. And I like to do things that get people out of the neck up thinking. So sometimes using artistic expression, like drawing what balance might look like for you. I had a great example of working with a client, and she traveled a lot, and she used to dance. And so she drew a picture of herself like on point on top of a car with, you know, work on one side and life on the other. And through the description of that diagram and what we noticed in the diagram, we kind of had some fun and some playfulness with it. It's like, when will you know you're leaning left? When will you know you're leaning right? And sometimes bringing that subconscious and like the body work up through an artistic expression can add a little bit more color to the situation, rather than I feel out of balance when I think this. So trying to get out of the robotic.
Right. And do you feel like I feel like the ideal is when you have sustainability in maintaining that balance, or you have like daily practices of whatever, whether it's your breath work or your meditation or your yoga or your walk or your like picking up your daughter, whatever. Like if you have those things, you can maintain balance a little more sustainably. Obviously nothing's ever perfect, but that's something that I feel like sometimes in our culture there's, you know, okay, let me just like grind and then I'll have like a weekend or a few extra days off, right? And it's like that to me always feels a little like you're missing the ideal kind of ability to meet what you want to meet from a family personal perspective and also a professional perspective ongoing, right? Sustainably.
That's a great point. I think my approach to sustainability kind of comes from a few different sources. One is I was a tank officer when I first got out of college in the Army. And so we always had a routine of PMCS, preventative maintenance checks and services. So before you went to the field, to maintain your operational readiness of your vehicle and maintain your combat power, you did things in the field to maintain that vehicle. And even when you were out in the field, you had to do some things to maintain that vehicle every day. Yeah. I remember when I worked in manufacturing, you couldn't just run a labeler on a bottling line all the time. You had to take it down for preventative maintenance. And when I think about my life as a runner, I have to balance the paradox of activity and rest.
Yeah.
And if I over-index on activity, I get hurt. If I over-index on rest, I don't perform to the right amount. So I don't know what the sustainable balance is, but sometimes it's like maybe an 80-20, you know, self-care versus performance. Right. But I think having those practices and also identifying what they call keystone habits. Like for me, if I'm reading, if I'm running and I'm meditating, everything else is probably going to be okay. I still have my, you know, daily rituals, but like I have some of those keystone habits that make everything else work. And I know if any of those three are off, sleep is a really important one too. Yeah. Like identifying those key that lead to everything else. Those are the early warning systems you can put in place. Like if one of those three are off, something's going to go wrong and I have to make adjustments. But I think sustainability and being able to perform at a high level over a long period of time is the goal. And like grinding yourself to burnout, I don't know, like usually you lose if you miss out on multiple days of work, or you can't go to commitments, or you end up sick.
So what do you think about this new, what is it, 996?
Oh, tell me more.
Okay, so I don't know enough about it. I was hoping maybe you would know.
Like, is there like a West Coast, like kind of
Yes,
grindy,
yes,
origin? I
yeah,
mean, everyone figures out what works for them. So I know back in maybe 10 years ago, so people talked a lot about like Pomodoro technique.
uh-huh.
Like you do 25 minutes of work on 5 minutes of rest.
Hmm.
I found that I'm more of like a 52-8 kind of guy. Like I'll do almost like a school period of 52 minutes and then I'll break and take
Yeah,
8. But I had to find my own tweak.
yeah,
So whatever like all those little secret things are, you know, often people talk about like what's the best time management or
hmm,
daily task management system. Well, it's the one that
yeah,
works for you, and you
yeah,
have to experiment a lot to find it. So whatever is coming out of the West Coast, if you're talking about working 6 days, I always thought that the goal was I will provide a client or an organization
yeah,
my talent, my skills, and I will help them get results. And if I
yeah,
can do that in the smallest amount of time possible, Mike Incorporated wins.
yeah,
And I still want to deliver the value, but I don't necessarily want to make time or how much time I put into things the goal. I
yeah,
would rather have more time for family, for fun, and find a way to balance. And that doesn't mean that I don't have weeks that I grind. I just don't do them week in, week out. And I hope that clients don't do
yeah,
that either. But so what do I think of that? It's probably another different style that might work for some people that will require personalization and tweaks to
yeah.
figure out if it's healthy for the individual or the
Right,
team.
right. So I pulled up 996.
Not awesome.
So it actually, like, I think it references a uh work ethic or work structure from China, and it's actually 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week.
I mean, if okay, so if you feel like that's balance for you and you have this like massive goal that you're after and
Yeah,
it feels like you stress, not distress, and it feels like flow and you're
yeah,
building something great and you feel like you're still getting sleep and you're eating well and you get a chance for exercise and it's the time in your life when you want to make a
yeah,
difference,
yeah,
then by all means do it. I don't know if that's how our bodies and our society was built.
yeah,
And that in some ways that feels very, work centric.
yeah, yeah,
I'd
yeah,
rather have more time for like walks with my dog personally, but to each
yeah.
his own, right?
Yeah, I guess Gen Z is redefining it because I think it usually is aligns with like corporate slavery, which obviously it's not good. Um,
Do
it's
you
a
want
bit
to work those hours, Rachel?
no, I'm like, no, this sounds awful. But I think that there's something, anyways, maybe we can like footnote it and circle back in the comments. But I think some people are trying to redefine it. But I think it also is actually like an intensity that's connected to winning the AI race in the US, you know. So
Hmm.
people are, to your point, like it's like the moment, right? The defining moment. So I don't know. But anyways, I guess we'll follow up on that one later. But crazy interesting stuff. You had mentioned a number of really interesting analogies you brought over from your past. What other, either, I know you've already mentioned a couple, so if there are others that really, inform your current present day perspective, would love to hear those, and or how you think about bringing experiences from your past to the present in general.
Hmm. I would describe myself as a pretty good architect, but a very poor resident. So I think sometimes we have to figure out where we work in organizations, the type of organizations we work well with, and when we
Mm,
are at our best. So I'm good in the build days, and I've discovered that over time, figuring out what my peak moments were in work.
mm,
I've also spent a lot of time in learning and development, and I've noticed that you can't just build a skill in a 4 hour session or an 8 hour session. It requires performance support, things that will help you on the job. It requires reinforcement and it requires practice. And I
mhm,
think practice is something that we don't do enough of. So I have a client who was working on pitching this new program for the first time. And my advice to him was to do some repetitions. And he ended up doing them to his teddy bear. And he recorded a couple of them, so we called them teddy reps.
yeah,
And so he would just do them, and they got better and better. When I was preparing for a TEDx recently, I did 50 reps in a week, just to make sure that I was ready. I would also say that my experience in the Army was a really big influence. Specifically, I was 24 years old, a brand new second lieutenant, and my partner was a 48-year-old platoon sergeant who had been around the block. So he's twice my age. He has all this experience, and yet every morning he says, "Good morning, sir." It was so strange and unnerving. So I had the book knowledge, maybe the strategy, but he had the will and the mood of the people, the experience, the repetitions. And so together, I felt like that was a very powerful combination. And it doesn't really exist in corporate. When I left the Army and went to corporate, I was like, wait, I got to lead on my own.
Yeah.
I don't have my platoon sergeant with me. So it was a stretch for me. That's one of the reasons I like to work with co-founders, is because I think that balance, that complementary pair, the dynamic duo can be really fun. And I did not learn to lead on my own. It took me a while to figure out that it's okay that I'm not well-rounded. I have 3 or 4 signature strengths. I'm going to lean into those and then find other partners to help me do the other things, but not try to be this perfectly well-rounded pair. I think being a father of girls definitely was an eye-opener for me. I started my career in an all-male unit, and then I moved into being a girl dad. And, I don't want to paint with broad brushstrokes, but they had some empathetic skills out of the box that I had to learn when I was 40.
Right.
And having the experience of being a girl dad, going to their dance recitals, walking, holding hands with the little girl, having conversations with them, I think that softened an edge a little bit and gave me the ability to both, come with presence and power and directness, and then also, empathy and genuine connection. And I think everybody probably has different types of energies in them, and they gave me a more well-rounded approach to being a human that I think maybe I didn't have when I was very achievement focused and direction focused early on. So those are a few.
Yeah. That's wonderful. It's incredible how you can be stretched in so many surprising ways, right? As you kind of evolve through your life and with children and, the great educators.
I mean, I can tell you one moment, middle daughter, she was crying and I was mad at her. And I said something like, "You still haven't cleaned your room." And she said, but daddy, I'm hying," because she didn't say crying at the time. And it was almost like disbelief. Like, how can you be angry when I need to be consoled? Like, you don't understand how this works.
Right.
And that gave me the ability to really stop, pause, see the mood, the attention, and focus less on what message I'm delivering and like kind of what's the temperature in the room. But like, that's something I always felt like, oh, maybe I could have learned that earlier.
Right.
It was a powerful message to receive from someone who's just trying to explain, like, I'm in a mood that needs to be consoled before you deliver that message. So like, come here and give me a hug.
Yeah.
And that's a very natural thing that maybe I was missing. But then, when you look your little kid in the eye and they're, 4 or 5 or so, that tends to soften you a bit.
Right. Right. That's, I always think it's powerful, the different experiences we have in completely different sectors or parts of our lives, whether they're just, happening over here at the same time or from our past, in a completely different world, so to speak. And, I have in my TED talk, it's like, your current self is built on the shoulders of past identities and past experiences you have, which I've always liked that idea, because I remember when I left the ballet world, I just assumed that nothing I'd learned would be relevant. Right. And obviously that has not been the case, but it can be easy sometimes, I think, to turn your back on past selves because it might feel not relevant, or maybe it's something you don't even want to remember, but it's all such an important part of like where you go next, that being able to flexibly bring aspects of different experiences forward is really powerful too.
I think that's the unique stuff.
Yeah.
Like, if you have the same ingredients, you're going to make the same thing that tastes pretty much the same, but those are the spices that make us unique.
Yeah.
And sometimes those are the distinguishing strengths. Like if someone says, "Oh, how did you learn to do that?" Like, "Oh, I learned my approach to sustainable sustainable work and work-life balance from maintenance on a tank. Not everybody has
Yeah.
that, right? And it makes
Yeah.
sense for me, but I think the same thing for you. If you have the discipline, certainly had to have stretching and taking care of your body, the ability to read the music. There's probably lots of applications for that uniqueness. And a lot of the times that I'm working with individual coaching clients, it's figuring out, who were you? What was the journey to now? Who are you now? And then who are you becoming? And there's maybe some direction, some choices that you have on that. But those baseline foundational experiences are what make people unique. And I like sometimes the best conversations for me are people who are coming from areas that maybe aren't a specific ladder. You just followed a certain Oregon Trail track to land in this job. I like people with a little bit of spice.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of spice, so you really like working with founders and with founder relationships. I feel like that's, those can be pretty spicy sometimes. But what is your pull towards that co-founder relationship and coaching people within that?
Usually they're doing something great. They have a vision or a mission, or they're trying to solve some sort of challenge, and they're in the building stages. So that fits with my idea of being an architect versus a resident. So if a company's been there, they're doing the same thing, probably not the right place for me. And sometimes it's co-founder, sometimes it's CEO, COO combos. Anytime you have a duo that needs to work really well. And usually in situations where someone's building a company, you're dealing with things that came up in the founder's dilemma, right? You're talking about the power of the relationship. You're talking about roles and responsibility, clarity as things evolve, and rewards, how those get discussed and negotiated. And they're a constant negotiation because the organization continues to change and evolve. And they're seeking congruence and alignment between two people. And sometimes that requires a balcony view. Some founders are able to do that, pull up to the balcony, see how the organization and their relationship's going. But sometimes when you're in it, it's really, really difficult. Both my parents were therapists, not when I was born, but they grew into that role. I did have a relationship in my life that ended through divorce, but I went to multiple marriage counselors, and I remember learning some of the skills of fair fighting and some of the skills of setting those healthy boundaries that I was learning, but maybe not applying in the first go round. And there's a ton of research from the Gottman Institute on marital relationships that can be cross-applied to founder relationships. I think I feel compelled to try to help people do it better. And I think there's a little bit of, sadness and guilt at not being able to do it right the first time. That's why I went back and got my degree in organizational psychology. That's why I like to help create dynamic duos. And also I read somewhere that a duo is the smallest atomic unit of a team. And usually if there's conflict within a team, it's showing up in the duos. So if we have powerful duos, we have powerful teams. So I think at the individual level, bringing out your best, duos bringing out each other's best. And then that can create a great team environment. And most people experience their work life through a team. So if it's a really positive environment, we can impact the quality of someone's life, of the entire team's life, and how effective that duo or that team is at accomplishing their big mission. So I just find it's really, really rewarding. Yeah. And I think maybe it's a little bit of lament at not being able to do it right the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder, is there something you see, like, because assuming you also have co-founder partners who just at the end up splitting up, right? Like it's just there's something missing there. Do you ever see something like that? You're like, oh, if I see this with founders, I am concerned about them being able to move through it.
Yeah, probably I'd go to the kind of 4 horsemen of marital relationships. So good thing to Google on Gottman. But one of the things I guess 2 things I'd look for is subterranean conflict. It's not safe to share the real thing to the other person. And the opposite of that, or I guess maybe a positive sign is when they're telling a story of a success in the organization, they almost are interrupting each other with pride, one-upsmanship. Oh yeah, but then you told the guy that, and you remember when, and I think I find that in marital relationships also, when it's a funny story or a celebratory story, there's almost a battle for the good. And then you told them we're not taking that for blah blah blah, and they almost correct each other
Yeah.
in a strength-based way.
Mhm.
So subterranean conflict, I'd say, is a big warning system. Like if I find, sometimes I'll do 2-on-1s and then 1-on-1s. And if the
Mhm.
1-on-1s are not about the future, they're just complaining about the other person,
Yeah.
then I find myself kind of monkey in the middle a little bit,
Yeah.
where there's a lot of complaints, criticism that have not been shared because it's not safe to,
Mm.
or something bad that happened, or one person is volatile. That subterranean conflict, where it's almost like
Mm.
corporate nice or performatively nice.
Right.
That's usually a pretty bad sign that people have moved away. Those can be addressed,
Yeah.
but that is definitely something that is a danger sign.
Yeah. Wow. Fascinating. I just feel like the co-founder relationship is such a fascinating one. And it is like very much runs in parallel to any kind of intimate relationship, right? Especially when you're working on something so new and risky. So fascinating stuff. What are your top, like, looking ahead? We're in such a kind of disrupted dynamic space. So what are your predictions for the next 6 months?
Well,
Or longer or shorter?
Yeah, I think we will continue to have paradoxical situations pop up that require more than an outrageous response. Right. So I have all these situations where people are frustrated because we should focus, we should have clear strategy. Like we need to be adaptable and flexible to the market. Like both things need to be true.
Yeah.
As a relatively pacifist liberal Democrat who grew up in New England, who also served in the military, I have a lot of conversations in the middle about a lot of different things. And in the US, like we just don't seem to have the endurance to engage in the difficult conversations that we need as a country, as a company, as individual relationships. So I think being able to get past outrage. So I guess the prediction is like we will continue to have pretty significant conflict, and this wrecking ball left, right. So we have to be prepared to find ways to get over this or that thinking and move into the middle. And I think with that, staying curious for longer. Humor is built on incongruity when things don't make sense and it's ambiguous and we kind of don't understand and it's a little dangerous. So using humor and play can be really powerful, and allowing that to happen and not getting kind of too serious. I think the other prediction I have is that we will find out, as much as we've kind of moved back from diversity, that's what makes teams and organizations perform better. So I think that we're going to come back to a place where speaking about DE&I, speaking about diversity is okay again, even though it kind of doesn't feel like it. We've kind of like swept some of those programs under the rug. We're going to realize that those are very important. And the things that we started learning kind of post George Floyd are still important to keep learning.
Yeah.
Especially as kind of the most privileged class. So I feel like that's going to make its way back. As people are approaching the world of augmenting their work with AI, we're going to realize that there's always someone getting on the highway at exit 1. So as much as we figure it out and how are we using ChatGPT and have our own agents, we still have people who have never even tried. And so there's going to be a societal conversation that needs to happen about how we use these things, what they mean, what the risks are. But there's still people who have never tried it before. Kind of recognizing that we're going to have a lot of people really smart, really fast, that have the curse of knowledge, that need to be able to bring everybody else along, because this could cause a significant societal shift in how much work there is available to people. Will it happen in a year? No. Will it happen faster than we think? Probably. So those are a few, but I think the primary prediction is we're going to continue to be polarized until we can find a way to get past outrage and engage in difficult, healthy conflict conversations.
Yeah. Well said.
I mean, that's why my TEDx was called, How to Find Common Ground When There Is None.
Yeah.
And I found some really good research on paradox theory and polarity management that helped me figure out, because sometimes I can dig my heels in and I'm very convinced that I'm right about something, but it's just my point of view.
Yeah. Totally. Thank you for sharing that. Usually I have a thank you slide, but I'm seeing now that it's not there. So Mike, it's been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you and get to share it with our audience. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we sign off?
No, just my pleasure. I think the one thing that you said about sustainability, finding what makes your life sustainable, is a wish and a hope that I have for everyone.
Yeah, amen. Where can people connect with you, follow your work?
LinkedIn is a great place, and then sabercoaching.com is my website. So if you want to find about coaching, work with duos, or work with teams, you can find me there.
Awesome, great. Well, thanks again, Mike, and thanks to everyone for joining. We'll see you next time.